Okay, this is going to be interesting. Lance Luke, Martin Pia here. We're doing a live webinar through our various social media platforms, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we got an interesting subject today. We're going to be talking about lead pipes, a hidden threat, history, hazards, and the path to clean water. And going to be covering a little bit about what's happening and Uh, we're broadcasting from Hawaii, and we don't have that many lead pipes, but we do, but it's more prevalent on the mainland. So let's get right into it. Thanks for joining us. If you're on our um, Zoom platform, and then also whether you're listening or watching on our various social media, thank you also. If you have any questions or comments, post them to the various platforms you're on. Hopefully we'll get to check it out. If not, we'll do it later after the webinar, and we're always happy to respond. If you have questions or comments, that's fine too. This webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, which is a local-based Hawaii construction management company. We do all sorts of things: construction management, building inspections, expert witness, all that kind of good stuff. So let me advance these slides here. Also, this is part of Ask Building Expert, which is the webinar series, and I'm the national building expert, or at least I try to be. Um, let's go right into it. Hold on a second. Okay, so why lead pipes are still a concern today? Because it's a big problem. And let's go through a brief history of lead pipes in homes and buildings. And this history actually covers the entire world, but we're going to kind of narrow it down to talking about uh, the United States. But if you're tuning in or watching from outside of the US, it also applies in whatever country you may be in. So starting back from the ancient Rome days, uh, they had the Romans built these aqueducts and that supplied water. And aqueducts were these structures, buildings um, that are still, some of them are still standing today. And they used it to supply water from point A to point B. And they used lead. And interesting, the Latin word for lead is plumbum. Plumbum. It became the root for the word plumbing. So the derivative word for plumbing actually came out of the ancient Roman days when they spoke Latin. Now, moving on to the 19th century in Europe and America and the United States, lead was favored for water pipes due to its malleability, meaning you could mold it, and it was sort of like a hard clay. You could actually just use your hand and kind of shape the lead. I've done that before in lead pipe jacks on top of a roof. It doesn't quite fit, and you kind of shape it to fit, the pipe or whatever building material you need to work on. So in the early 20th century, lead pipes became common in the US, especially in urban areas. Then fast forward to the 70s, man, we're really flying here. Awareness of lead toxicity grew, leading to restrictions. So um, in the early days, the lead piping was used up until probably, I would say, maybe late 70s. Okay. And then government takes a while to act or do things. So in 1986, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which is a United States department, banned new lead pipes, but did not require existing ones to be replaced, leaving many still in use. So this is a key factor here. Although the EPA banned the use of new lead pipes, it did not require existing ones to be replaced. So what does that mean? That means all the existing lead pipes are still in use if it has not been replaced already. Now, this is in 1986. So fast forward to today, there's cities and areas through the United States that are actually taking action to replace the pipes. And then the EPA also passed another requirement, kind of mandating replacement of lead pipes. So we'll talk about that shortly. Okay, so here we are. Last year in 2024, the US EPA announces new lead and copper rule improvements. And it's the acronym is LCRI, meaning lead and copper rule improvements. And the money was set aside to fund clean drinking water under the Biden-Harris Investing in America agenda. And so what that means is the nationwide mandate requires replacement of lead pipes within 10 years. There's stricter lead testing and lower thresholds in drinking water. So in different municipalities around the United States, the water is always tested. Like in Hawaii, there's Board of Water Supply, and they test the drinking water and they submit their findings. And you should actually, if you haven't, you should read the Board of Water when they send out their analysis of the drinking water. You should actually spend time reading it. And it's like all these different chemicals and things in parts per million or parts per billion. And it's really technical in nature, but maybe for fun, just see how many components are in the water, how many different things, right? Pesticides, and I haven't seen microplastics in the water, but hopefully they're testing for that also. Bipartisan infrastructure law funding to speed up replacements, and then specific to Hawaii, about $25 million was allocated. So $24.9 million was allocated to Hawaii for lead pipe inventories and projects, which means replacement of lead pipes wherever they are. Okay, so that's the government helping the cause, helping the situation. Some more information on the history of lead pipes in homes and buildings. Why was lead the preferred plumbing material as opposed to other materials? Well, it was easy to shape and install. It's durable, it's flexible, and it's common in older buildings. It was widely used before anybody knew about the health risks. It's sort of like asbestos. Nobody knew it was a health hazard. And at the time of use, everybody thought this was a space age material because it could protect from a fire. So if you wrap something with asbestos, it's almost like it's fire rated, but then it was known to become a health hazard later, breathing the fibers. The peak usage in homes and buildings, we're talking about like during the term from 1920 to 1960. In the United States, as urbanization soared, cities installed lead pipes for water systems, many of which still cause contamination today. So uh, there's a lot of lead pipes still around, still hasn't been replaced. Now, here's something, a fairly easy concept, how lead enters drinking water from pipes. So you may say, well, I have lead pipes. What's the problem? Okay. The problem is the lead, which is toxic, that's in the pipe because the pipe is made out of lead. It leaches into the water. So primarily through corrosion. So you have your drinking water pipe and water is going through it when you turn the faucet on. And some of the water actually have these small particles of lead that actually get dissolved into the drinking water. So if you have a lead pipe and you turn your water on, like your kitchen faucet, to fill up a cup of water, there's going to be either lead particles or lead in the water that got dissolved. So um, what happens is your water becomes not safe to drink because there's high levels of lead, or even if it's low levels of lead, it's still not good. So that's what's happening. Now, I'm not a doctor, although I might play one on TV, but let's talk about lead exposure and health risks, health impacts of lead. Now, the bottom line is the medical community knows already that lead is harmful, especially to children, and that's a big problem. So whether the lead is in water pipe or the lead is in paint, like lead-based paint or lead-containing paint, it's still a problem. Lead doesn't go away. If a child drinks some water or plays in the dirt around the house and let's say pieces of lead paint peeling off the house falls in the soil, gets mixed in the soil, the kid is playing in the dirt and he's putting his hands in his mouth or something. Now there's lead in his body, there's lead in his bloodstream, and lead doesn't dissipate, it doesn't go away. It's not like if you take vitamin C, uh it just your body uses whatever vitamin C it can use and the rest gets you know out gets relieved out of your body. Okay, not lead. Lead stays in your body. It's just like asbestos fibers. Okay, so here's the here's the big problem. The widespread harm, lead affects nearly every organ, especially the brain and nervous system, and especially children. Children are the most vulnerable. Okay, they suffer most from lead poisoning than adults. And what does lead do? It causes developmental delays, learning disabilities, lower IQ, and behavior issues. So that's why the the testing is done through a blood test. You can't just ask a child certain questions. The real way to test is you got to take a blood sample, send it to a lab, and get an analysis. The other thing is for pregnant women, it harms a developing fetus, leading to developmental delays and complications. Now, there's actually proven case studies with the data that I'm providing to you, and I'm not here to get into more medical science and all that. I'm just kind of relating this health and safety issue as it applies to home and construction and drinking water. I'll share with you some more tips. Here's a real world example. I'm not sure if you remember, but at one time uh, there was a big problem in Michigan, in Flint, Michigan. There was the 2014 Flint water crisis began when the city switched its water source to the Flint River from the Detroit water without adding corrosion inhibitors. So this caused lead from old pipes to contaminate the water, exposing around 100,000 residents to dangerous levels of lead. And this was like a huge story at the time. And people really couldn't believe what was going on. And of course, politics got involved, and it should be, became really, really a big story in the news. Okay. Um, Here's another real world example. Let's talk about Washington, D.C. In 2001, the DC WASA, WASA, and sounds like a Japanese name, right? But the acronym is actually the Water and Sewer Authority. So that's what WASA means, Water and Sewer Authority. So this authority, this agency detected high lead levels at least 83 times higher than the accepted safe limit in the city's water. But get this authority, this agency failed to report them to federal regulators. So here you have a state agency not communicating with federal regulators. It's like maybe keep it quiet or something. The crisis gained big attention in 2014 when WASA revealed finally that the lead levels in tap water exceeded the EPA's 15 parts per billion limit. And so here's a state agency withholding crucial information to the federal government. Now, there's big problems in this because when the federal government is notified, of course they're going to crack down, but at the same time, the federal government could come up with money to help fix the problem. So that's another reason to notify the federal government early rather than later. The other thing is notifying everybody early can get people prepared, get them to be aware. Maybe they're not going to drink the water anymore. They're going to buy bottled water, right? So when you fail to notify the public, now that's a huge disservice because now you're dealing with people's health. Okay. Let me take a short diversion here. It's similar to if you're in Hawaii. Remember, we had that Red Hill water crisis where the petroleum gas got mixed in with the water, and people were drinking it in Red Hill, and the government was saying there's nothing wrong. Kind of similar to that situation. Okay, here's some other example. In Newark, New Jersey, water crisis started in 2016 with high lead levels exceeded the limit of 15 parts per billion in multiple Newark public schools, affecting over 200,000 residents by 2020. Now, this is a biggie because the water in public schools are contaminated with lead. Now what's happening? Now you got all these children drinking this contaminated water and getting sick from it. In October 2024, it was revealed that the US EPA hired to replace lead pipes had falsified reports and failed to do the work. Now, what's up with that, right? So there's notification that there's lead pipes, and then you hire EPA contractors to replace lead pipes, and they're BSing their reports and doing half-ass work or not doing the work at all and saying that they did it. I mean, this is like double jeopardy here. Crazy. Now, what is the current legislation and efforts to eliminate lead pipes? Well, actually, the government is trying to do the right thing, albeit slow, but at least it's happening. So the current legislation and efforts to eliminate lead pipes, the EPA ban on lead pipes. The EPA's 1986 Safe Drinking Water Act amendments ban lead in new pipes and solder. And solder is a material used to connect two pipes together. And that also, when you're joining two pieces of pipe together, the solder had lead in it also. And then the 1991 lead and copper rule set limits on lead levels in water systems. So the levels that could be hazardous because of the lead, the levels were changed, so it's getting better. Okay. However, the existing lead pipes were not required to be replaced, leaving many older properties at risk. So here we have like 1986 and then 1991, the government is passing rules, but it still doesn't require the old pipes to be replaced. So although situation is getting better, it's still not 100% good because of the fact that there's still old lead pipes around. Okay. So let's talk more about federal and state initiatives for lead pipe removal. The United States allocated billions of dollars to replace lead pipes through the 2021 Lead and Copper Rule revisions and American Jobs Plan. Now, you don't have to be concerned too much about the title and what these initiatives are called. You just got to be aware that there is something going on. So states like Michigan and New Jersey and Hawaii mandated replacements of the lead pipes, and many cities now offer lead service line programs. So what that means is if you're a homeowner and you need your lead pipes replaced, then you work something out with the government, and the government can help you. Now every state is different, so I'm not sure, how much it's going to cost or what the percentage the government's going to pick up. Now, let's talk about how to identify lead pipes in your building, identification techniques for homeowners. Now, most of the pipes in your homeowner, most of the pipes in your house you can't see. So it might be hidden in the wall, buried in concrete slab, buried in the ground. If your house is raised construction, there's a raised foundation, and there's a crawl space under your house. You may be able to see the pipes. So that would be easy to tell, but if your house is not built like that, it might be hard because you can't see the pipes. So there's actually, in the old days, before the plastic piping, CPVC or PVC pipe, there were three main types of plumbing pipes. One is galvanized steel, the other is copper, and the other is lead pipe. Now, the galvanized steel, it looks kind of grayish in color to brown. If it's brown, it's like corroded, right? how you can see galvanized steel is it has these threads, um, and all these connections. And then copper, as you know, the copper would look like a copper penny. Um, it's not going to look like a new copper penny because after a while it gets dull in finish, and sometimes it has this patina finish in color, which is like a kind of greenish coloring. Okay, that's from exposure to the air and those kind of things. And then you have your lead paint. I mean, your lead piping. The color test, lead pipes are usually dull gray, but then I've seen galvanized pipe dull gray also. So there's two other things that you can use for testing. One is a scratch test. Lead is soft and can be scratched easily. So you get a knife or a rock and you scratch the pipe and nothing happens, then it might be galvanized steel or a steel pipe. Now, if you can scratch easily, revealing a shiny surface, then chances are that's a lead pipe. And then you could also use a magnet test. Lead is non-magnetic, so if you kind of use a magnet and stick it on the lead pipe, the magnet's not going to stick on. Okay, so that's another method. But of course, professional verification is recommended. If you use a scratch test and a magnet test and it comes out where the pipe is not lead, it still could be lead. So that's why you need to go professional verification route. Okay, now how to identify lead pipes in your building? There's a water testing option. There's a at-home test kit where you can buy at like your local hardware store. And I don't, I mean, it's okay to use those tests, but they're not that highly technical, and it's not like sending the sample to a certified laboratory, but that's better than nothing, right? So you could use the at-home test. Water testing kits can detect lead, but may not be that accurate, right? Just like there's these lead swabs that you can test your house if it had lead paint, and that might be not as accurate also. So the best thing would be to have some water samples sent to a lab for lab analysis. That's the most reliable. Um, and I haven't seen where it's free. I don't know, maybe the local board of water jurisdiction may do uh, water testing for free. I'm not sure. You have to check with them. Or maybe it's low cost through city health departments, especially in high risk areas. Um, if you're that concerned and it's not free, I would still recommend paying whatever it costs to have it tested so you know what the situation is. Let's talk about pipe replacement and modern alternatives. Overview of replacement materials. There's instead of replacing, well, you're gonna take lead pipe and you're gonna remove it. And what do you replace it with, right? Not another lead pipe. You're gonna replace it with different types of materials. So here's the different types of materials that you could replace it with. Copper, durable and safe, though more expensive. I don't have it here, but galvanized pipe. You could use galvanized pipe, which I don't recommend. I rather recommend copper. Why? Because although copper is more expensive, it doesn't corrode like galvanized pipe does. Galvanized pipe corrodes from the inside and it doesn't last that long. Then there's PVC, which stands for polyvinyl chloride. There's um, PVC Schedule 40, which is, white sprinkler pipe. And you could use that for your cold water, but you cannot use that for hot water. You have to use a CPVC pipe, which is rated for hot water. And there's a stamp on it, or it's a different color, or there's a yellow line running through the pipe vertically, um, and that's how you can tell if it's CPVC. It's affordable, non-toxic, corrosion resistance, but in some cases, it might not stand up to a fire. Okay, so keep that in mind. And the other type is PEX, which is cross-linked uh, polyethylene type piping. It's real thin and it coils up. It's flexible, easy to install, and resistant to scale and chlorine. Now, in the early days when PEX first came out, how to join the two PEX pipes together, they use a coupling that's made out of brass and zinc, and it's found that the couplings used to fail, especially on the hot water side. And that's why there were class action lawsuits against this PEX pipe, because the zinc and brass combination were not code compliant, and it resulted in leaks. So can you imagine having, miles of PEX piping throughout your a high-rise building, and you got all these hundreds of connections, and they all start failing and leaking, which is not good. Pipe replacement and modern alternatives recommended action plan for property owners. You test your water regularly, particularly in homes with potential lead service lines. But I would say once you test it and there's lead already in the water, then that's already a red flag. Then, take action to have your pipes replaced. Okay. Don't just keep testing it without having an action plan to replace it. The reason you want to keep testing it, you want to see how much lead is actually in the water, but it does no good to keep testing it year after year and you're still drinking lead in the water. Okay. Use a water filter. Filters certified for lead removal are effective for drinking and cooking water. Pipe replacement, consider replacing lead pipes or explore governmental municipal assistance programs, and then educate yourself and your tenants. If you're an investor and you have rental property, you're obligated to disclose to your tenant if there's lead or not, right? Um, so you're gonna notify your tenants about the risks and interim safety measures. Now, you might say, well, if I don't test it, I'm not gonna know, so just tell the tenant, I don't know, okay? Now, you could do that and still be compliant, but the best thing to do is spend money, have it tested, so you can provide the more updated and correct information to the tenants. Okay, so that's the best case scenario. So winding down, so the conclusion from this webinar, okay, would be to find out what's going on. Do you have lead piping? If you do, what do you do? Okay, not only test it, but take steps to have your pipes replaced. And you're going to use whatever governmental assistance available, because it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be, on a single family house, it's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars to replace your lead piping. And Hawaii, the state of Hawaii is fairly new as compared with other states. Like say in Virginia, they got houses that are 200 years old, right? I haven't seen any 200-year-old house in Hawaii. I think the oldest I inspected was like 85 to 100 years. So this still could be lead in the pipes and lead in the water. So just be careful. So let me see what else I have. What you missed, we've given maybe 100 webinars so far. It's on our website on different topics. It had to do with building and construction, some real estate, condo stuff. You go to our website. What's coming up? We have let me look at the list here. We have the next webinar topic is painting and waterproofing. And then we have concrete crisis. So I'll be talking about some states in the United States have serious concrete problems. Then after that, cesspools in Hawaii, and then coastal erosion around the world. And here's our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. Every day we're adding some stuff to it. We're putting up webinars that we've given so you can watch it anytime you want. We have all the webinars we've given to date on our website. Pick and choose which one you want to watch. We have expert websites. So we have probably 100 websites. And each website has a different topic, like roofing, waterproofing, fire life safety, contractor licensing, painting. So help yourself, it's all free. We have 2 websites on Lahaina, the Lahaina fire. You know, we have a lot of good information. We have blogs, which has valuable information. We spend a lot of time researching and providing you information to help you. And then, you know, we have our webinars like I talked about. So there's, if you can't find a topic that we've given already, shoot us an email or call us or let us know, and we'll be happy to consider that topic. And then we have a whole bunch of books on different topics, even one on monster houses, Lahaina wildfire. We have 2 on the LA fire, and they're available on Amazon. You can buy it, but on our website we have some that you can get for free. You can download it for free. Okay. And pertaining to this topic on lead piping, if you have any questions, now's the time. You got questions, we got answers. So my phone number is up on the screen, 808-754-3425. Email lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. If you're not receiving our monthly newsletter, sign up for it, because that's the way you can get a free book of the month. And then also, you know, I share valuable information on different things. So I'd like to bring Martin back on as the host to see if we have any questions or comments from anybody in the audience. So Martin.
Yes, Lance, I'm here, and you've done such a great job on updating us on lead pollution in our water and pipes. So appreciate it. So yeah, we have a
Sure.
few questions here from our social media and early submissions. So let me get to them right away. First is what's the best way to get assistance with the cost of replacing lead pipes in my home? This is probably from a local person, so maybe local related.
Okay. Probably the first step would be uh, to make sure you do have lead pipes, right? Through a laboratory analysis of the quality, water quality. And then let's say that it's positive, it's verified that you do. The next step would be contact a couple of plumbing contractors and have them give you estimates, because every house is different. So it's not like it's going to be a ballpark figure, $6,000 to replace your piping. It may not be. It may be 12,000. It depends on the design. Like I said, if your house is on a concrete slab and the piping is in the slab, how do you replace that? You have to bust the slab open. Um, one way would be to reroute, just cut the pipe, replace what you can, and then the inaccessible areas, just reroute using more modern piping material to bypass the piping that's in the slab, or let's say you got a long run in the ground. That might be too expensive, or you just don't have access to it. The other thing is, let's say your house is built on a hill, right? And there's a long run from the street to up to the front of your house where the service entry is for your water. Okay, so of course that's going to be a lot more expensive to replace than if your house was 20 feet away from your main water supply. Okay, so contractors have to come out and actually take a look and measure and see what the situation is, how long the runs are. They got to measure how much pipe they need. And of course, the more pipe is going to be replaced, the more labor is involved, right? So how a contractor figures out the estimate is how much pipe they got to replace, how much time and labor it's going to cost, right? Add all those and then tack on their overhead and profit and all that. So I can't give you a ballpark figure, but I can recommend that you contact licensed plumbing contractors to get estimates. The other thing is check with your local governmental officials and see if there's a program where you can get some subsidy or get it subsidized, or maybe the government will end up paying for 100% of the fix of the replacement. That'll be good. If not, maybe the government would allocate a percentage or a flat amount, give $5,000 per household or something like that. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but that's something to check into.
Okay, Lance, thanks. And just along that line, you mentioned there was some legislation passed in, I think, 21, and then Biden did something in 25 to allocate funds, and what was it? There's like 25 million for Hawaii. Is
Right.
that funds that would be tapped for that?
Yeah, but I'm not sure at this point in time how the funds are going to be used, like whether it's going to be first come, first serve, and they're going to pay, the government's going to subsidize and pay 100% of the lead pipe replacement, or whether the government's going to pay a percentage, or whether they're just going to give each homeowner a set amount of money. I'm not really sure how that works, right? So I'm sure we'll find out how it's going to work, but
Okay,
at this time, I'm not sure.
very good. Thank you. Here's another question that came in. It's how often should water be tested if a building has older plumbing or pipes?
Well, I would say you test it once, and if it has lead, then that's something to take action on, right? But let's say it's millions of dollars, which the owner doesn't have. Well, I would say you have, after your initial test, right? Ask the consultant, your hazmat or environmental consultant, well, when's the next time I should have the building tested, right? The pipes tested. I would say every 6 months or every year, right? If it's not that bad, see what happens is on the hot water side, on the lead pipe, it tends to be worse than the cold water side. Why? Because the temperature of the water actually breaks up the minerals and stuff in the pipe, and helps to dissolve the lead because of the hot water. So that's why when you do lead sampling water testing, you want to test both hot and cold side. And normally, historically, the hot side has the most lead contaminants than the cold side. But it doesn't really matter, because you're not going to tell all the occupants in the building, oh, you know what, from now on, don't use the hot water, right? That's like kind of ridiculous. So it doesn't matter if the hot or cold has or lead limits or the hot side is more. The fact that there is lead in the water is not that good, provided it exceeds the EPA threshold. Now, over time, and that's why it's good to test, because let's say we test the building today and the analysis is, oh yeah, there is lead in the water, but it's below the EPA threshold, so it's not hazardous. Okay. All right, that's good. But what happens 6 months from now or a year from now? That's why you got to keep testing, because you tested a year from now and the pipe got now a year older and it's not performing as it did when you first tested it. Now you got more lead in the water. So, but I don't think, I mean, it's better to be, proactive than reactive. What I mean is that take steps to mitigate the problem, take steps to replace the pipe. You're not gonna make the water safe just by testing. If it exceeds the limits, right? It's unsafe. So even if the lead content was below the threshold, I would still, to me, that's still a red flag because of the presence of lead. That's why the mandate is you replace all the lead pipes. You don't just, replace the pipes that are bad, right? So, but check with the environmental consultants and see what they say. Now, if you're in an apartment building or office building or like a shopping center or whatever, and there's lead pipes, now, you got a bigger problem, because now you got your tenants in there. You got your tenants and you got visitors that could be affected by the drinking water, right? If you use the water and you just, water your plants and all that, then that's not the problem. The problem is ingesting the water. Now, I'm not talking about just drinking. I'm talking about if there's lead in the water and you're using the water to brush your teeth or take a shower, take a bath, there's still lead in the water, right? So that becomes unsafe. So that's just something to be aware of. We're talking about building safety here and having to do it with your health, and that's critical.
Oh, very good. Good answer. And yeah, it does bring up other questions. So I guess it's related to the next one that we got here is what type of water filter should I use if I suspect lead in my water?
Well, how many people actually use water filters right now, right? Um, it could be if you're living in Hawaii, I don't know what the percentage is of people using water filters. The water in Hawaii is supposed to be one of the cleanest waters in the world because it gets filtered through volcano rock and all that stuff. So it's supposed to be clean. But even if it gets filtered out and it's clean drinking water, right? If you have lead pipes and you turn your faucet on, the clean water is now going through the contaminated lead pipe, and now it's not clean anymore. It's contaminated. So there's a bunch of water filters on the market, but you got to look for the certain certification. You got to read the certification. There's actually a agency called American National Standards Institute, which is commonly called ANSI, ANCI. I mean ANSI, ANSI. And that's a third party certification process that reviews products, right? And so if it has the ANSI certification, or there's another certification, it's NSF, which stands for National Sanitary Foundation. If it has these certifications on it, then you got to read the fine print as far as the what kind of contaminants are removed from the certain filter. Okay. Just don't buy it just because it has the certification or listing on it. Okay, you gotta read the fine print because not all water filters are gonna filter out lead. Some do. Now, there's different types of filters. There's your water filter, which is like a pitcher where you could filter water that way. There's a water filter where you could put under your sink, under your kitchen sink. There's another water filter where you can connect to your refrigerator because when you're making ice cubes, you don't want lead particles in your ice, right? So think about all these factors and then do something about it. But even if you only buy bottled water, that's still not gonna protect you all the way because you're not gonna use bottled water to make ice cubes, right? Necessarily, you're not gonna use bottled water to take a bath or shower. Okay, so and then somebody asked me, what if I like, we learned in the Boy Scouts that if you're out hiking and camping in the wilderness and you don't have clean water, there's a river there, okay? Is it safe to drink? Well, we don't know. So we learned that you can use water purification tablets, or if you boil the water, it removes the bacteria and stuff, and then you can drink it. Okay. Now, with lead, if you boil the water that has lead, you're not going to get the lead out of the water. It's not like bacteria and all that. So that's not something that is going to do the trick. So just be aware of that. The main message that we wanted to give you today is that there's still building components in your house that may not be safe. If your house was built prior to 1977, 78, it could possibly be that you have lead in your paint. You may have lead in your pipes. You may have asbestos. These are the main hazardous materials to be aware of. So it's always wise to check, do an inspection, send stuff to the laboratory just so that you know what's going on. Just the bottom line is, to be safe. So Martin, any other questions or comments?
No, that's all that I've seen come through online here. But I had a quick one for you. You mentioned about asbestos and lead, and how it leaches off the pipes, and it's creating problems for for our water. And I was just kind of curious, and I don't know how much you can answer this on, but we're hearing more and more about, like you mentioned, the water bottles and the plastics leaching out, and those I guess PBCs or PSBs or whatever they're calling them, that are now being found, that's in our water, in the water, and in our in our bodies, I guess, where we're having to take in all this toxic stuff. So my question was related to the PVC pipe you mentioned. Is just like we didn't know about asbestos and lead and the long-term effects as it's used for construction. Nowadays we're using a lot of this PVC stuff, which is, isn't that like plastics and all this other kind of stuff? So is there the possibility that down the line we're going to find out, oh, we're going to getting all these toxins and stuff from the PVC pipe that has replaced all the other kind of pipes? Just a curiosity question.
I don't think it has to do with the PVC pipe. I think that it's just the plastics in general. And we get a lot of materials come from China. and there's plastic all over the place. And that's why there's a huge microplastic problem that, I mean, studies found in the ocean, people got tested and they found that there's like minute amount of microplastics in people's blood,
Right, right.
and it gets kind of scary. I just saw a study that there was this lake, not ocean, not connected with the ocean. There was a lake that was high in elevation, and they did sampling, and it was microplastics in the lake. And I'm thinking, how in the world is microplastics in a lake like that? What happens is in the air, they did testing of birds and they found microplastic in the blood of birds. It's like all over. And before we didn't really know, but um, if you think about like there's plastics in the ocean, yeah, of course, because there's beaches that get littered and carry the plastic away. The waves crush it, and now you got all these finite particles where you may not see with the naked eye. I mean, it's almost like sand. So instead of looking at sand, you got all these granules of plastic, and it doesn't dissolve. It doesn't. That's why the technology today is they're making plastics that can dissolve. So you have a plastic container, you buy food, and then you could throw it out, and years from now it'll become disintegrated and it mix in with the soil and all that. But they're making more containers and things now out of recycled materials that are biodegradable, like the forks and spoons and all that. Um, that's supposed to be non-toxic and all that. So they're trying to move away from the plastic. In some cases, some places, that's why they ban plastic straws, because of the plastic that doesn't even degrade or anything. It's just there. The tons and tons of plastics that don't disintegrate, and what are we going to do with it, right? So it's becoming a problem, and so somehow the building industry is connected now to the health industry, especially when we're talking about hazardous materials and um, even like we did research on fires. What happens when there's a fire? If you look in your house, right, around your house, and you look at all the things inside your house, your carpet, your furniture is made out of wood, right? Your mattresses, and there's foam and things like that, your drapes. When things like that catch on fire and burn, they give off the toxic fumes. And so there's so many things in a household that's not really safe. But it's safe, but when it catches on fire and burns, then it becomes not safe. Like carpet, when carpet burns and the carpet padding, that's like toxic. You don't want to breathe that stuff. So anyway, it's just one of those things that we're learning all the time, and all these industries get kind of interrelated, because before in the building and construction industry, we weren't really too concerned about health, but now we are. So I know we're winding down out of time. We want to thank everyone for tuning in, for attending, especially those that are on our Zoom platform. I mean, we see the regulars all the time, and we appreciate that. Also, those of you tuning in on our social media platforms, we're here to help provide valuable information. If we can save somebody's life or make somebody's life easier, that's what we're here for. So um, thank you for attending, and hopefully you'll sign up for the next webinar, or at least catch us on one of our social media channels. So we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Aloha. Bye.
Streaming stop.
Hey, Martin.
Yep.
I couldn't find a stop recording.